So like I said in my other videos, I grew up on this steady diet of Star Trek Voyager, all the way from like age 11 to 15 or something like that. And I love all Star Trek, but Voyager is the one that brings me this kind of nostalgia that's just kind of off the charts. So I just recently started this series of videos where I'm talking about what I'm calling the unforgettable adult moments in Voyager, by which I mean not the X-rated moments, but the moments that when I was a kid, they were a yawn in these episodes, but when I came back as an adult, they were just impactful. So I'm calling them tongue-in-cheek, the unforgettable adult moments. But this series, the unforgettable kid moments, is kind of going alongside that. And this is just kind of my opportunity to just reminisce a little bit about some of these episodes that I loved so much as a kid and that still have some of that magic to them. And as well, I'll have some episodes in here that were just really impactful to me as a kid. And I'll usually talk about, at least have like a little blurb at the end about how I see them now as an adult, because I can't help talking about that as well. And kind of a little bit off topic, but it's because of this kind of relationship I had with Voyager in terms of loving it as a kid and loving it as an adult. It's because of that I enjoyed watching season 1 of Star Trek Prodigy so much when it was released a couple years back. Fact is, when I was a kid watching Voyager reruns, I was roughly the same age as that target audience for Prodigy. So for me, this idea of this character-driven crossover type series where 12 to 14-year-olds get to meet Captain Janeway, talk about the ethics of Starfleet, talk about how to have good relationships, how to be upstanding citizens. To me, that concept, as I was watching season 1, just was absolutely awesome. Because to me, Voyager always was this kind of unique combination of being kid-friendly and also grown-up oriented at the same time, because I loved it as a kid and I love it as an adult. But then, of course, unfortunately, I just found out that Prodigy, apparently it got canceled, and you can't even find season 1 on Paramount Plus anymore, which is a pretty big disappointment, because I always, for the last couple of years, I kind of had Prodigy in the back of my head as, yeah, when that next season comes out, it's going to be great. Back when Prodigy had come out, I kind of had this contented little thing in my head where I would picture in my mind, you've got 2 streams of Star Trek. There's Discovery and Lower Decks, both of which I had little to no interest in. And you've got Picard and Prodigy, which tell these compelling character stories, and yet still manage to have this way of triggering some good nostalgia inside of me. So yeah, so I'm a little disappointed that I won't get to see that misfit crew of teenagers. I won't get to see them bump into a 3D cartoon Chakotay. Don't get to see them learning what it means to be upstanding Starfleet officers and iron out their relationship, their relational issues. Anyway, so that said, for this first video in my series, I'm going to reflect a little bit about what it was like for me as a kid watching Future's End, and that's the first episode on my list. I've got a list of like 6 or so that I want to kind of remember and remember what was so awesome about them. This is one episode that I didn't have any trouble selecting for its place on my list. There's just something about this episode that has always made it stand out as the most fun, the most exciting, colorful, thrilling, interesting, kind of the best ride out of all of Voyager. I mean, I guess for starters, part of my fascination as a kid probably went back to the fact that I always loved all the time travel episodes. I still like time travel episodes, but I loved them back then. Something about seeing people from different time periods interacting with each other was just fascinating for some reason for me. And I guess I also had this kind of weird nerdy thing that I did where I would kind of catalog all the time travel episodes in my head and divide them up into categories based on different things. And then, of course, I also enjoyed thinking about the time travel mechanics, kind of like Captain Braxton, A leads to B leads to C, regardless of whether it actually makes sense, strictly speaking, but it has its own kind of logic to it, which is kind of fun. Now, here's a kind of a controversial opinion, maybe. I think if you're just purely talking about the experience of watching it, fun factor, that kind of thing, I think in all of Star Trek, which time travel episode is the best example of just purely being thrilling fun, some good laughs thrown along in the way? I mean, Future's End to me is just like the top. I mean, yeah, I'd say there's some close seconds to that. We got Time's Error from TNG. We've got even Picard season 2 feels very Future's End-ish, and of course you can't help comparing it to Star Trek 4, which is just great fun and has always in my head has always been standing next to Future's End as being very similar. But to me, here's my controversial opinion: Future's End in Voyager is the only one that stands out as being this one single unified, bright, and colorful tapestry of scenes just seamlessly tied together with this engrossing musical score, this musical score that just shouts intrigue and keeps nudging you with this tantalizing message that something is not right at Chronoworks. You know, to me, there's really no competition for being the most engrossing and fun out of all the Star Trek time travel episodes. Not to mention, there's something thrilling about all the epic bits of Voyager mythology. This is the episode where the Doctor gets his mobile emitter. How cool is that? And it's our first encounter with Captain Braxton and the whole time travel Starfleet, the time travel version of Starfleet. And not to mention, we get to see the Doctor getting pummeled in the face and smiling about it, and Tuvok as the great Freakosaurus. What more could you ask for? When I watched this episode for the first time as an adult, it was actually pretty much exactly the same as I remember it, which is not usually how those things work. I mean, yeah, there were a couple of jokes that I didn't get when I was a kid. There were some scenes that now make less sense to me because they're actually just not really realistic scenes. But other than those, generally speaking, I actually get the exact same feeling that I got so long ago, complete with all those familiar musical cues and all the magic of just feeling like you're a kid again, not to mention. But yeah, this sense that you get, this feeling that here we are exploring this exciting and fun sequence of events. We get, watching cars get vaporized, watching the Doctor get kidnapped, and all these hilarious moments of every kind. And I mean, not to mention as well, I just got to say it, Ed Begley Jr. as the devious Henry Starling is just off the charts. Like you can't compare anything to that. I actually, a couple years back when I first rewatched this as an adult, I remember being disappointed at first because I got to the end and I realized, well, that was fun, but there was nothing extra. There was no deep stuff that went beyond all the action adventure that I've already got drilled into my memory. Where's the extra stuff, the stuff for me to add to my memory and say, oh, I never knew it. This was actually talking about these deep, things from history or psychology or whatever. So I was actually disappointed when I watched it as an adult. And I kind of found that with a lot of the ones that I loved the most as a kid, a lot of the time I watched them as an adult and I'm like, that's it? It's like everything that happened, I actually remember it all, But that disappointment has kind of gone away over time as I've kind of remembered why I loved it and remembered that even though there's nothing extra, that's all deep and emotional kind of stuff. But the stuff that I loved as a kid is still amazing. And I love the experience of just remembering that pure, unadulterated fun. Because really, at the end of the day, not everything doesn't have to be deep and profound and emotional. There's so much to love in the magic, in all the happy, colorful fun that made this float to the top of my most loved episodes with so little doubt about whether it belongs there. So Future's End for me is one of those, it is the priceless, unforgettable, I'll call it the unforgettable kid moment of Voyager for me. And just so much fun to watch and even to rewatch.